In 1962, a local woman in her 50s was taking a nighttime stroll around the ancient standing stones of Avebury Henge in Wiltshire, southern England. She had a personal interest in the area's archaeological history and found it soothing to walk alone within the bounds of the Neolithic circle. It had become a personal ritual, roaming amongst the monoliths in silence under the cover of darkness once or twice a week. But on this particular night, as she wandered through the towering stones, she noticed something new to her. A glowing orb of light was also making its way silently around the monument. The woman stopped, watching in amazement as the light began to approach her, halting 15 feet away. From this distance, she could see that it was an orb roughly 2 feet in diameter and floating 10 feet above the ground. And for some moments, she stood still in awe. Then, without warning, the whole area erupted in an incredibly bright flash of light, leaving the woman momentarily blinded. She dropped to her knees, and as she waited for her eyesight to return and had time to process the oddity of what was happening, she began to shake with a primal fear. Gradually, as she continued to blink away the lingering after-images burned into her retinas by the flash, she managed to resurvey the scene. The glowing orb was gone, but on the ground below where it had been was something else. There on the grass before her, its milky white form cutting through the darkness, was an enormous, writhing worm. As the woman stared in disbelief, the creature opened two huge, primordial-looking eyes, and seeming to notice her, began slithering quickly in her direction. Predictably, the woman scrambled to her feet and ran for her life. The British Isles are home to over 1,000 Neolithic stone circles and other prehistoric monuments. Among them, Avebury Henge stands at the largest and most complex, spanning 333 meters in diameter, large enough to encompass part of the modern village of Avebury itself. The Henge's outer circle is believed to have originally contained around 100 massive standing stones, many of which still stand today, arranged to form a near-perfect ring. Some of these stones reach heights of over 13 feet or 4 meters and weigh as much as 40 tons. And within the larger outer circle lie two smaller concentric circles. The monument is dated to around 3000 BC, 800 years older than the nearby Stonehenge. Built at a time when the culture of the land's people is believed to have exhibited a strength of connection to the natural world that is long gone today. Religion and culture aligned to the rhythms of the seasons, celestial patterns, and the cycles of life and death. It is thought that rituals at sites like Avebury involved the sacrifice of animals, and possibly humans, to worship or honor the spirits of nature and strange prehistoric gods. Some believe that these ancient sites were deliberately constructed to align with a network of ley lines said to crisscross the land. These lines are thought to form a kind of energetic nervous system that spans across the earth, connecting sites such as Avebury, Stonehenge, and the Great Pyramid of Giza. Supporters of this idea argue that the builders of these monuments understood and sought to manipulate this energy, creating essentially gigantic stone devices that would amplify their spiritual practices and act as gateways to other layers of reality and consciousness. Today, many New Age and spiritual tourists visit Avebury every year. We don't know exactly what ideas the woman who witnessed the white worm held about the place, nor who she was or what she thought the creature might have been. What we do know is what British Royal Air Force intelligence had to say about the event. This story originally surfaced following a meeting between paranormal writer and researcher Nick Redfern and a retired RAF intelligence officer Malcolm Lees. In the 2000s, Lees informed Redfern that a declassified document detailing the incident had recently been released following a Freedom of Information request to the British government on the subject of UFOs. Redfern obtained and validated a copy of this document via the British National Archive. It reportedly describes how the woman, whose name has been redacted throughout, fled home in terror following the encounter and immediately contacted the local police. She was referred by the constabulary, presumably as her account involved a flying object, to the desk at the nearby Air Force Base, who treated it to be a crank call. However, the next morning, the information was passed on to the Provost and Security Services, a branch of the Royal Air Force which works in policing and intelligence. This prompted Malcolm Lees, who worked for this branch at the time, with a colleague to visit the woman at her house the next morning. What the officers found upon arriving at the woman's house was someone almost catatonic with fear, as she refused to come outside following what had happened. But after some coaxing, the men were eventually allowed into the house. The woman made them cups of tea and recounted the details of her encounter. The pale, writhing worm she had seen was approximately 6 feet long and 1 foot thick, far larger than anything that should have been slithering around the Wiltshire countryside. Eventually, they convinced the woman to return to the henge with them. But after thoroughly searching the area, they found no evidence of a glowing orb or a monstrous cryptid. But what they did find, close to the spot where the creature had appeared, was a thick trail of slime leading away from the location. Taking the situation at least somewhat seriously, they returned to the woman's house to retrieve a jar, and the officers collected a sample of the substance. After ensuring that the woman was in a stable physical and emotional state to be left alone, the men asked her not to speak of the incident to anybody. They then took their sample back to the Air Force Base and filed a report. The now retired RAF intelligence officer Malcolm Lees explained to Nick Redfern that he could discuss the 40-year-old case since it had been declassified. He added that the incident stayed with him not just because of the strangeness of the woman's story or her seemingly legitimate terror, but also because the account seemed to have been taken seriously further up the chain of command. Lees revealed that following their report, plainclothes colleagues were dispatched to monitor Avebury Henge and its surrounding area for several weeks. However, he also admitted that beyond the initial classification of the case and the collection of the slime sample, he had no further knowledge of what had become of the investigation, or if any significant conclusions were ever drawn. Perhaps what rings stranger than the woman's story is the fact that an organisation like the Provost and Security Services chose to take the case as seriously as they did. The decision to investigate, collect physical evidence, and ultimately classify the results suggests that something about the event was deemed credible, or at least worthy of some scrutiny. Wiltshire, the county in which Avebury lies, has long been a hotspot for alleged unexplained phenomena. It is home not only to Avebury and Stonehenge, but also has the highest concentration of crop circle appearances in the world. The region is a hotspot for UFO sightings and cryptid encounters, and is argued to be a significant area of intersection for ley lines. Many today are extremely skeptical of the theory of ley lines and earth energy. However, it has been scientifically proven that the Earth's ionosphere resonates at specific electromagnetic frequencies, which vary across different locations. These frequencies, known as the Schumann resonances, were first theorized by German physicist Winfried Otto Schumann in 1952. The primary Schumann frequency is at 7.83 Hz. Vibrations in this area have been shown to have a measurable effect on human physiology and well-being. Research, including studies conducted by NASA, has revealed that prolonged separation from the Earth's natural environment can negatively impact human health. Astronauts, for example, have reported experiencing disorientation, fatigue, and other health issues during long space missions, where exposure to the Schumann resonances is absent. Some claim that in order to address this, spacecraft are equipped with frequency generators designed to replicate Schumann resonances, helping to maintain astronaut health and counteract the effects of being away from the Earth. Measurements taken around Avebury Henge actually indicate that frequencies in line with the Schumann resonance are particularly strong in the area. At the very least, it may have been this natural vibration that had such a calming effect on the witness prior to the incident. Some researchers, such as the psychologist Michael Persinger, claim that exposing subjects to targeted electromagnetic frequencies through a specialized helmet can induce spiritual or paranormal experiences. Perhaps, if the stones of the broken circle do influence these fields, they may occasionally produce hallucinations instead of the calming or spiritually uplifting effects one might expect. We don't know if the woman was ever able to continue her meditative walks around the henge, or if she felt her sense of connection with the place had been ruined by her experience. Archaeological evidence does point to ancient peoples using Avebury as a site of ritual, but what we don't know for sure is what weird primeval spirits and deities they sought to summon or appease. Interestingly, many of the stones were discovered buried underground before being re-erected in the 20th century, with evidence suggesting that the church may have been involved in their burial during the medieval period. William Stukeley, an 18th century antiquarian who spent several years documenting the structure and geography of Avebury Henge, observed that the henge was part of a much larger, interconnected superstructure spanning the landscape, with avenues of standing stones extending from the main circle to other megalithic locations. He proposed that the greater structure, with Avebury at its center, was deliberately designed in the form of a colossal, winding creature, which he assumed to be a snake. But who knows? Maybe it was something else.